Hi, I'm Leah McLaughlin with Skyline College's Bay Area Entrepreneurship Center, and here today with another info session to help you plan your barber or beauty business. And today we're going to be going over business costs and income so that you can start to get a handle on what it's going to cost you to open the style of business, how do you plan for it, and how do you really make sure that you make decisions so that you are operating sustainably and getting the income that you need to support yourself and your family. All right, so we are going to start with some basic concepts. And we're going to start with startup costs. So startup costs are initial things that you need to buy in order to start your business. These are not everyday operating expenses, but more like one-time purchases, or maybe they're things that you have to buy occasionally. So as you're planning your startup costs, all of the things that you need to invest in, a big component of that is going to be rent. So if you need to think about what that rent might be, please go to our how to rent a chair or station, and it goes over the different levels of rental options that you have. But for instance, a chair in a salon in the Bay Area is going to run about $850 a month. And you might need to pay a first and a last or deposit. So having that rental, those original startup rental costs saved up or getting a loan for that is really important. And then there's just buying all of the materials that you will be needing in order to perform the services that you're going to perform. If you are going to sell retail, then you need to get that inventory in place. That's going to be a bunch of money you're going to spend in upfront, and it's going to take months until people buy that inventory from you and you get those costs back. So this is money that you're paying upfront, and it's going to take a while for that business to pay you back. Things like towels, smocks, different items that you're going to need in addition to maybe you're doing facials. So there's the products that you use, but then all of the things that you need in order to apply or wipe them off or put people in a robe, etc. So you want to think about all those materials. A really important thing to do that not a lot of people do when they start their business is have an emergency fund. You might get sick and need to have a cushion. Your space might flood. All of these things do happen. They're not planned for, but you want to have an emergency fund already there in case something goes wrong. And you don't have to close that business and immediately go out of business right after you get started. And then as you think about designing your space, maybe you're renting a chair or a table, and there's really not a lot of designing of a space that you need to do. So those expenses are going to be really minimal, but maybe you're renting a solo spa or salon and you want to design the space. So this person has plants, they have a little sandwich board that greets people when they walk in. There's a mirror. They maybe did this themselves, or they paid somebody to do a mural on the wall. So there's the decoration of your space that you are going to want to budget for and plan for those costs. If you're going to sell inventory, you need to stock up on that. This is all things that maybe are a back bar, or these are products that you can sell to your customer, but that's going to cost you money up front. So that's startup costs. And then there's just all of the pillows, blankets, lamps, furniture. Again, the space that you're renting might come with some of this. It might not. Maybe you want to put up little shelves. So it's just really thinking through, do I need to buy this table? Really just itemizing on a spreadsheet every single thing that you're going to need. And if you don't really know, go to somebody else's business, take pictures, look at what they're using, and just think through every single element. Paper products, hand sanitizer, and create a list on your spreadsheet. We're going to get to a spreadsheet later on. All right, second concept as we start to think about our business is this is going into general operating expenses, but these are also things that you need to think about when you first are getting started, because you might be covering these expenses and you don't have enough customers to pay for them right away. So we're going to get into this concept of fixed costs. Fixed costs are, as this chart shows, the cost stays exactly the same and it does not go up or down dependent on the number of clients that you serve. It's a monthly expense. It's a yearly expense. It's something that you have to pay regardless of whether you have a single client or 100 clients. It is not dependent on seeing clients. So let's go over some examples of what fixed costs are. Insurance policy. You need to have this for your business. The insurance company doesn't really care whether you saw a single client or not. They're going to expect you to pay for that insurance every single month. My car insurance doesn't care whether I drove my car. They're having me pay to insure it regardless of how much or how little I drive it. So same thing with business insurance. You have to pay it if you see a single client or 500 clients. The cost stays the same every single month. Rent. This is one of our biggest fixed costs, is just paying for our space. So again, your landlord doesn't matter to them if you had no clients, if you were out sick and you couldn't service a single person, or you were busy nonstop. Your rent is due and you need to pay it regardless. So these are costs that we want to really plan out and get a handle on how much money we're going to have to spend every single month to run our business. Things like marketing and promotion. Are you paying for a website? How much does that cost? Are you paying for paid boosts on Facebook or other social media? Are you paying somebody to do some advertising for you? So we want to think about those costs, how much we're spending in order to do our marketing and promotion, build that into our budget. Phone services, how much does that cost? And if you have a personal phone, you want to really think about this, start thinking about this as a business expense. Utilities like electricity. If you are renting, it could be that those are included in your rental agreement. So great, it's not an expense for you, but it might be. And so electricity, this is a tricky one, electricity and water, because sometimes people think of this as changing, depends on seasons, etc. We want to kind of think of an average. What's our average monthly cost that we want to build into our budget so that we're making sure that we are meeting the cost of our business with the amount of income that we're bringing in. And then things like cleaning supplies. If you see one client and you clean your space every single day, you still need to use all of those products to clean your space. If you saw 5 clients in the day and you clean your space at the end of the day, it's still the same amount of cleaning, usually, more or less, regardless of how many clients we saw. So we're going to go into a spreadsheet that shows more fixed costs. I wanted to just give some examples. And really, it's basically, I have to spend this. It doesn't matter if I saw just a couple people or a whole bunch of people, the cost stays the same. That's why they're called fixed costs. All right, now that we've thought about that, then other major bucket of costs are called variable costs. So this is different from fixed in that these costs go up for each client that you serve. So it's not variable in the way that some people think of it, like electricity, you might spend more in the winter because you have the heat on, or more in the summer because you have the AC on. So it's variable dependent on the season. The word variable does mean that, but in this accounting finance world, variable cost means something specific, and it really is tied to what you have to spend to serve each additional client, or if you are making a product, what you have to spend to make each additional unit. So this is things that you have to spend, materials you have to use. If you're doing a facial, what are those products that you use? If you're doing somebody's hair, what do you have to spend in order to do that style, that color? So that's usually what goes into variable costs. So let's go through some examples. Let's say you're doing waxing. What's the cost for the wax for each time that you do a client? Is it going to be dependent on what parts of the body you're doing, how much of that you're going to use? If you're doing nails, you have to use nail polish. So these are materials you have to use and buy and pay for to deliver that service. Things like gloves, paper products, maybe there's a certain amount that you're using every time that you deliver service to a client. Now we're back to electricity again. So electricity might be a fixed cost, like you turn on the lights, you turn on the AC, you turn on the heater. That amount of electricity is not dependent on the number of people that you're serving in that day, because either the air conditioning is on or it's off. The lights are on or they're off. And that's just a fixed cost for the day of using your space. However, sometimes a service might use a lot of electricity. Maybe you have heat to set a color, you're using a blow dryer. I used to work with a lot of women opening childcare businesses, and for each additional kid, there's a lot more toilet flushing, hand washing. And so often water was a variable cost. It would go up for each additional kid that they would enroll into their program. So it's really about just thinking through what makes the most sense for your business and the kinds of things that you're doing. These things aren't completely set in stone, and sometimes they're a little bit fixed, a little bit variable. As you plan for your expenses, just think through what makes the most sense for you. Paper products. You might be using a few tissues or a couple gloves for each client, but maybe that only costs you a few cents. And so putting it in and thinking about 2 cents for that haircut doesn't make a lot of sense. And so you might want to average out a box of gloves per month and just put that in your fixed expenses, because it just is an easier, more logical place to put it. But I want you to understand these concepts first, and then I'm going to show you a spreadsheet and you just figure out what makes the most sense for you. Do I plan in pennies for each service, or do I lump those together and average out a monthly cost for that item? And then things like towels or laundry service. These might be, if your laundry service is significant, how much more is each additional client costing you? Or maybe that makes more sense as a monthly cost. Again, there's no right or wrong here, but what is the best approach for you to do your planning? All right, so we are now I'm going to stop sharing for a minute, and I'm going to go into a spreadsheet. And And we are going to talk about how you can start planning and a spreadsheet that we have that can help you do that. So I'm going to go over this tool a bit. Thank you for your patience as I navigate my recording. All right. So we have put together a spreadsheet to help you start to plan and think through. This is already designed for you. You can download it and then use it for your individual business and planning. And I'm going to walk through the different tabs, what they're about, and how you can use them. So this is startup costs. How do you just start itemizing each thing that you might have to buy? So there's some miscellaneous costs like legal services in case you need help setting up. You want to do an LLC instead of a sole proprietor, setting up like point of sale software. You're going to hire somebody to do some marketing materials for you. You need to buy a bunch of business cards, that insurance, rent deposit, utility deposits. So then you just start to enter in, do some research and start to enter in amounts for each line item. You can add other things in here and put additional items in if you want. So initial fixed cost save. So once we're going to go through the tab for fixed costs, in our example business, that came out to be about $2,000 a month. So as you're starting up, you might not have enough clients to pay for that. And so you might want to budget into your startup costs that you have maybe 3 months of those fixed costs covered so you can pay for all of those expenses, regardless if you have a single client or not. An emergency fund. Again, maybe there's some extra plumbing that needs to happen, or I knew somebody who was building out her solo suite and it was not set up for hair for a salon, a single salon. And it turned out that the plumbing installation just ballooned into much bigger expense than she was expecting. So just having, pardon me, having a buffer for this is great. Pardon me. And then we have some equipment and supplies example for cosmetology. So this is like a rundown of all of the different supplies and materials that one might need for that. And Alana Smilovitsky did some research about potential costs. So these are just examples, but maybe a starting point to help you just think about all these different tools and materials that you might buy. My apologies to the estheticians. This is a bit more Cosmo focused. But hopefully this is just meant as a starting point to really get you thinking about it. All right, let's move on to the fixed cost tab. And so this is going to have some already examples of things that you might need to pay for. Again, it depends on your rental agreement. Maybe utilities are covered, and so that's going to be zero for you. And that's great. But again, just some examples of what it could be, and for you to start thinking about all of the things that you might want to build into your monthly expenses and really start to get a handle on what are you going to be responsible for every month. This is an example of a solo suite, and this is more cosmetology focused, but again, it's just getting you thinking. And here we have these materials that in a way are variable costs, but they're so minimal and they really don't cost that much per client. So we've decided to put them into fixed, like a couple boxes of gloves, a box of foils, a couple jars of hand sanitizer. So again, just think about, do I want to count it as a variable cost or do I want to think of it as a fixed cost? All right, let's go into services. This is going to get a little bit more complicated. The startup and fixed costs is just a list with numbers. And we're going to start to go into how do I think about services. So I have a different recording that can help you start to think about price, but we have a couple of services here just to get us started. So this is for somebody in a salon and they offer two services, color and a haircut. So immediately the first thing is that each of these is going to have a cost for processing that payment. They have a point of sale service like Square, and that charges a service fee. So the formula is that it is the price times a 3% service charge. So at each client that they see, each time that they charge for that service, they have to build into that a service fee. Then this is what materials do they need to provide these services. So you'll notice the color is a bit more expensive than a haircut. So this is using all of that product to color the hair, whereas the haircut, that might be like a little bit of a styling, shampoos, etc. And so that cost for materials is a lot more minimal. So in the end, after we have our price and we deduct our variable costs, then we have what we call our gross profit. This is what we're actually taking home. We're charging $200, but what we actually earn from delivering that service after paying for our variable costs is what our actual income is. Now I added an extra level of analysis in here. If you want to use it, you can. If not, I was just thinking, how do you decide as a student whether you really want to work for yourself or go work for somebody else? And I thought, well, let's think through how much are you going to earn hourly? So maybe if you're super experienced doing a haircut, you can charge $95 an hour. But that means that probably that you've been in business for a while, you're really good at what you're doing. If this is a top charge, you might be earning about $58 an hour, but what if our price is actually only 50? So that's gonna, let's say we have an hour of service, a half hour to set up and clean up afterwards, sweep up all that hair, get the chair ready, disinfect. So we're looking at an hour and a half to complete that service. So we're earning about $30 an hour. Let's turn this back to 95 is our price. And now we are earning $87.15 after we deduct our variable costs, and we're earning $58 an hour. You can also use this to plan out different types of services that you might be thinking about delivering and compare, what do I earn hourly from each service? So the price tag, $200 versus $95, it might seem obvious. Well, Color services, I can charge a lot more. I should do that. But look at this. It actually takes 2.5 hours to do color. And what I'm earning is pretty close for color to what I earn for a haircut. Maybe I really just love doing haircuts a lot more. Coloring just feels like a lot of work. I hate the chemicals. So you can really just this could help you decide what you really want to focus on and think through what you're potentially going to earn um, from each of these different services. And then think about how many people you could see per day, 3 versus 6, and what's the total income per day that you could earn from these different services. So I threw this in as an extra layer of analysis to help you think through your business and your startup. And then there's other just direct materials to consider that go into your service, and then some indirect materials. Again, gloves, maybe that just gets put into your monthly budget. Snacks, beverages. Do you want to have that per client as a variable cost and go into here and deduct from that price, or do you want to put that in as a monthly expense? Think about it, set up an appointment. We can talk about it together. All right, this tab kind of shows what you might make from retail, selling retail. If you want to get into that, explore that. And this is a great place to start. We also have a tab for just thinking through your monthly expenses and what does that look like and how much do you really need to earn per month to support yourself. And then we have this other tab called the break-even analysis. So this is where all of this stuff comes together. Starts to get a little bit more complicated. If this feels overwhelming, just start working on your startup costs, your fixed costs, and we can go over this together. But I'm going to talk about it in case you feel really ambitious. So what this is doing is this is pulling in from our other tabs. So this is coming from our services tab. And we are looking at gross profit for color. So if you remember, after we charged a certain price, we deducted some variable costs, and we got a gross profit. So in our break-even tab, that 164 is carried over. And we're thinking at this moment, we're starting our business. We're feeling confident we could do 20 clients per month. We can definitely get 20 clients in the door every single month to do color. Maybe you're currently working somewhere and you know a certain number of people are going to follow you. They love you. They're going to go anywhere that you go. So you know, I already have 20 people per month who are going to come see me for color. So that's how much you're going to make. That's your profit, and that's the number of people. And so you're going to get 3,280. Again, you can change all these numbers around. Play with these spreadsheets, try out different scenarios. Haircut. Again, this was our gross profit for each haircut we deliver. And we're thinking we're going to see 15 people per month. And so that's how much we're going to bring in. So our total revenue right now that we're estimating as soon as we open our doors, we're going to see this many people for these types of services. And this is how much revenue we are bringing in. This is where our fixed costs come in. So we had here in our fixed costs, we had 1,950 after we added everything up. So that means that we're bringing in this much money. We're now deducting the fixed costs, and we're going to have to pay self-employment taxes. That is 15%. So our self-employment taxes, this is already built into the spreadsheet. You don't need to change these formulas. It's going to calculate your taxes for you. And so this is what our total profit is actually going to be. This is what we're going to take home at the end of the day. If you want to kind of, maybe your startup costs are like, I'm going to make it easy for myself. $12,000. So maybe I want to kind of like, how fast is this? I want to add that in. So I'm kind of paying myself back for what I invested in the business. So I'm going to add 1,200. And I'm like, I want my business, I want to plan into my business model that I'm going to have those startup expenses paid back within the first year. And actually I need to change this to include that. Oops. Okay. I'm going to change the model, but we can add that into, and I just need to work on the spreadsheet. All right. So that's another level of analysis and planning that you can do to really think through your business costs and expenses. And then here we get to yet another level. So again, something that a lot of business owners don't do is to really think through all the hours it takes to run that business and what are they actually earning at the end of the day hourly. Just for example, my mom ran a baking business for 10 years. And when she finally let it go, she admitted to the fact that she was only earning about $12 an hour from that baking business. So that included, cleaning the space that she was cooking her baking products in, deliveries, managing all of her accounts. So I added this also into the spreadsheet for you to really think about, is this a good decision to open this business or not? So we have the number of hours it's going to take to deliver each of the services. In addition, there's just like running the business hours that has to go in, accounting, keeping up with all of managing all the money coming in, all of the money that you're spending, a certain amount of time per month that you're going to spend on marketing, miscellaneous time, client management. So you really want to think about like, how many hours per month am I going to spend on running my business? And how many hours total is that? And so this calculation at the end is our total profit divided by the number of total hours that we're spending on the business. And in our services example, we're earning about $60 an hour. But when we calculate in all of the actual hours that we spend total on the business, we're down to around $23 an hour. So this is a lot of information. I built in a lot of different layers of analysis into these spreadsheets. You don't have to use all of it. Like I said, book an appointment with me. We can go over this and start with the easy parts, the startup costs, the fixed costs. Just start to do the research. We're going to have a link to an online resource that you can go to really look at costs for different tools and materials, and then get some help with the rest of it and look for the prices workshop. All right, thank you.